Welcome to the Hands-On History Podcast. My name is Mark Collings. I'm currently President of the Central Alberta Historical Society and Vice President of the Historical Society of Alberta. I'm also Executive Producer with Destination History, a historical documentary production company. Hands-On History tells the stories of historical sites around Alberta, taking us on unique journeys throughout the province. Today's podcast, we're welcoming Jenessa Dunkle from Castor Tourism, who's going to tell us about Our Lady of the Rosary Hospital and other sites around Castor. Jenessa, why don't you tell us a little bit about Our Lady of the Rosary Hospital?
So when Castor became a town in 1910, a big concern at the time was healthcare. So one of the doctors at the time was, him and his wife were taking care of patients in their home. But it was decided that we needed a more suitable place. So the priest at the time, it was the first priest of Castor, and his name was Lucien Leconte. And he wrote to the Daughters of Wisdom, which are based out of France, requesting that sisters be sent to nurse and run a hospital in Castor. But it would take time for a building to be built and the nurses to be sent here. So temporary solution was to move a 2-story house into town and make it a temporary hospital. And this became known as Bellevue Hospital. And it ran for a little over a year while Our Lady of the Rosary was being built. And it's right near where I live. It's just like 3 houses down. It's no longer standing. It was bulldozed, I think, maybe 10 years ago, that building. So then the hospital, the town donated the land for Our Lady of the Rosary to be built on in $3,000. And then the citizens of the community donated the rest of the money. And at the time when they started building it in 1910, it cost approximately $20,000 to build. And so they built it with the cafeteria, kitchen, laundry, and boiler room were all in the basement. Then there was a dumbwaiter that would go floor to floor that would deliver meals. That dumbwaiter isn't there anymore. And then the first floor was men only because they didn't, want men and women mingling on the same floor. And the first floor has the operating room, and it had the pharmacy, and I'm not exactly sure where lab and x-ray were in that building. And I'm assuming probably on the first floor, but not sure. And it had a couple wards and a couple private rooms, I believe. And then the second floor was women only and had the delivery room, and children also were on the second floor. And then the third floor was where the sisters lived, and they stayed in these little cells. They're called kind of almost like cubicles, and those are still up there where they stayed in. And then on October 2nd, 1911, 5 sisters from France and Eastern Canada arrived by train. And out of the 5, only 1 spoke English. They all spoke French. Some of the town folk on that first night that they were here offered to let the sisters stay with them the first night, but they wished to stay in the hospital. However, their first night was so cold that by 3 a.m. they were all huddled around the stove in the kitchen. So it must have been a pretty cold October that year. And speaking of the cold, an often overlooked job was the job of Alphonse Patch. He was the man for many years he worked there, and he would get up during the night to stock the boiler to keep the hospital warm and running long before the advances in modern heating systems. But getting back to the story, the sisters are busy the first week preparing the hospital, which had no furniture. A lot of the furniture was donated by people in the town, and it cost $100 at the time to furnish a room. And the hospital was also filled with sawdust. They were just kind of finishing the construction on it. So they're they were busy preparing the hospital and getting all of it cleaned up. And during this time, several sisters were also called away to assist with nursing, as the lady in charge of Bellevue fell sick with typhoid fever. So 2 sisters went there to nurse the patients. And 1 sister spent 6 weeks nursing a young man who had also come down with typhoid fever in the country. And the hospital had its official opening ceremony on October 29th, 1911. But the first patients didn't arrive until November 1st, 1911, when the 6 patients who were at Bellevue were transferred to Our Lady of the Rosary. And at the time that it was built, this was the largest hospital in Alberta outside of Edmonton and Calgary. And it was the only hospital between Red Deer and Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan. And so it was a pretty big site. There wasn't many hospitals and communities at that point. So people from a long ways were coming here to get care. And all of this took place before universal health care. So I was able to, when I was looking through the archives at the hospital, find an old bill from the original old bill from 1914. It looks like a certificate, and the writing's all like fancy and stuff. And they charged $1 to $2 a day for services for the time that you stayed in the hospital. And I think it was maybe a couple years after their arrival, the sisters came up with an insurance plan where you could pay $5 for 6 months of health insurance or $10 for a year of health insurance. So there were 2 really nice private rooms on in the hospital where wealthy people could pay more to stay. So, and they would have fancy doilies on the trays and things like that. But the sisters would never deny anyone health care. And a lot of people left the hospital signing a promissory note. And at one point they had $1,100 worth of money in promissory notes, and some were never paid because it was transient times in the prairies. People were coming and going and moving along. All the settlers, times were hard. So yeah, a lot of them never did get paid. And a lot of people paid with livestock, like chickens and stuff like that, and which were added to the hospital farmyard. The hospital had like cows and chickens, and the nun sisters tended to a garden to help feed the patients. And the first year that it was open in 1911, 1912, the hospital suffered a lot of overcrowding because there were so few hospitals. But after a little over a year, other hospitals, small hospitals in other towns began to pop up, which eased some of the overcrowding. And not too long after their arrival, one of the sisters came up with an idea of a private boarding school where out-of-town kids could come and learn there for like a month to a year's time before their first communion, for female students, because they were they thought they could board on the 3rd floor with the sisters. And so they didn't want, I believe that it was females only for the first while, because they didn't want the girls and the boys to be rooming together on the same floor. So it kind of slowly morphed into more of a regular Catholic school. It wasn't just for the kids to be educated for their first communion. So a lot of girls came from out of town who lived maybe 30 miles out of town, in their country school, finished at grade 8. And so if they wanted to continue their education, they'd come to Castor and they'd board at the hospital. I think it was like $11 a month. So it was quite, I think, expensive for that time. And tuition was, I think, $2.50 for the year. And so some would work as well to kind of pay part of that through their working, and they'd stay on the staff, always lived on the 3rd floor as well. So they started that boarding school. So we have a lot of boarders who are still in our community who boarded on that school, boarded on the 3rd floor. My great aunt was one of them, and she got in trouble once with the sisters, and as punishment, they made her run up and down the stairs from the third floor to the basement over and over until she was too tired to misbehave again. And a few years later, after it was just girls, the boys started coming to the school too, and they boarded at the priest's house. It was Father O'Halloran. He was our priest for over 40 years. I think he was the longest running priest in Castor. So they boarded there, and Father O'Halloran taught at the school. He was the dean and the priest at the hospital. So he played quite a vital role in our community for a long time. And so I should go back a little ways, before the sisters started teaching, they needed a private school. So they moved an old building in right north beside the hospital to the north. And they slowly added on to it over the years. And then in 1929, the hospital had an addition added. I believe they always intended to add it because the basement was always in a T shape. But it was just a rectangle shape. And then they added a west wing, which was where the new chapel then would be. And so that eased some of the continuous issues with overcrowding. And then in 1929, an elevator was added. And so before that, the sisters and fellow staff members would have to carry patients up and down the stairs. So I'm sure that was eased a great burden for them. And Castor they did a lot of surgeries in their operating room, and people come from as far away as Calgary to get surgeries done by Dr. Cousineau and Dr. Foster. They were very well-known doctors at the time. And so yeah, I think they did a lot of tonsillectomies and appendectomies and probably amputations and things like that were probably the most common things that they did here. And in 1949, part of the private school that the nuns had started burned down. So they decided, because they were getting more and more students, they decided to build a new school across the street called Therazetta School, which is still running today. And they took what was left of the private school and they turned it into a convent, which was where the sisters who taught at the school then lived in the convent, and then the sisters who nursed at the hospital lived in the hospital. And I believe in 1959, there were 23 sisters serving here. That was the peak of it all. We never had more than that serving here. And I think there was 124 sisters in total that served here through the years. And in 1962, a modern hospital was connected to the existing hospital by a hallway. And slowly, the majority of patient care was transferred over to the new building. However, the hospital has always remained very much used and was still lived in by the sisters. And the operating room, what was always the operating room, was turned into their new kitchen. And then in 1990, the convent that was sitting beside the hospital was bulldozed to make way for the future development of a long-term care that would also be attached to the hospital. And at that point, the remaining sisters who were teaching at the school and who were living in the convent, they moved into the hospital with the nursing sisters. And then in 1992, we got our first hospital administrator. Previously, it had always been the sisters that ran the hospital. But the sisters were still there, and they continued to assist with patient care and lead the chaplain services. And then around 1994, our long-term care opened, and what used to be the chapel in the old hospital was turned into our therapy room. And the chapel was located elsewhere in the old hospital. And then in 2003, the hospital became a part of Covenant Health, which ended the sisters' service at the hospital after 92 years. So I believe that all of the sisters who worked at the hospital have now passed away, but I think there are a few left that worked at Therazetta School who are still alive. Um, and today, the hospital still plays a vital role. It has 5 offices, our therapy room, 2 boardrooms, a computer lab, and a lot of storage space. And the 1929 elevator is still used daily to transport items from floor to floor. And most of the rooms are still easily recognizable, such as the operating room with its tiled walls, and the pharmacy with its old wooden cabinets that go to the ceiling that used to contain all the medication. And a lot of the hospital remains untouched since the sisters left, other than the rooms are used for storage. So the furniture isn't all like still exactly how it was or anything like that, but the 3rd floor is completely untouched. Like it hasn't had any renovations or hasn't had any restoration. It's just used for storage. And then the 2nd floor has a few of the rooms are set up as bedrooms. If the roads are bad, staff can stay there at the hospital. A lot of staff don't want to though, because there's a lot of ghost stories surrounding the hospital. So not everyone wants to stay overnight in there. But yeah, and so it's a really cool site, and it's really unique that a building this old is still playing a vital part as our hospital. And it's kind of cool that it opened 112 years ago and has been open 24/7 since. It's never closed. And but in terms of visiting, the fact that it's still attached to our hospital and still has boardrooms with meetings happening and offices with people doing their work, and our therapy room is in it, it complicates visiting the site. There are hopes to continue to restore the hospital and have more of a museum focus down the road. We did have it more set up as a museum, but then they had to redo all the electrical, and then now there's foundation concerns. And just in a couple months, I think the elevator's going to be out of commission for 6 months because they're bringing it up to code. Because when you bring it floor to floor, it never goes flush. It will be like 4 inches above or 4 inches down. And there's a button where you can manually adjust it, but it's not great if you have like carts in it and you're trying to pull them out. It's kind of hard. So yeah, in the next for the next while, like it is a construction zone right now, so it kind of visiting the site is very limited. If people are really wanting to see the site, I would suggest calling the site and talking to the maintenance department, and you might be able to get permission to go in and see it, but it is very limited, especially when they will have active construction going. Then no one will be allowed in other than staff members and people that have to go into that building. So hopefully in the next 5 to 10 years, who knows, it will be more accessible. A lot of us hope that, but the building is also owned by Covenant Health, so it's not our town that owns it anymore. So a lot of the decision, it's hard, but it is a historical site. So that was a big kind of milestone getting that. So it's something that a lot of us hope to work towards. And all of the old surgical tools, like all the surgical equipment, it's still in there. It's just in rooms, like in storage, like everything is still in there. So it's really cool.
Well,
so it's kind of the whole story. There's of course little stories here and there, like about things that happen, but that's the base story of all what went down.
wow, that's fantastic. So what were some of the, do you know what some of the requirements were to get the historical designation from the province? Was there any requirements in terms of maintaining the authentic structure?
Yeah. I think, now like they can't change certain things because it's a historical site. Certain things were changed before it was a historical site. Like our therapy room would not have been able to be added back when, because they, moved a couple walls and things like that. And same with our chapel. It was 2 rooms that they turned into, they knocked it out to make one big room for where our chapel is now in the old hospital. So certain things like that were changed prior to that, but now they can't change anything. Like we have a stairway where it has the old wood railing, and it's not up to code in terms of how tall it is, but that is fine because it's a historical site. It can't be changed. I'm not sure. I know that it was our site administrator at the time who we had one. I don't know how long she served, 20, 25 years. And she's there for a long time, and she was the one that was really pushing to have it as a museum and have it. And she was the one that got our historical site designation, I believe. So I'm not sure what went into getting that done, but I mean, it's pretty like obvious that the hospital what has a very historical significance, and it was here for a long time. So I don't think that would have been hard in terms of, I mean, it obviously should be a historical site.
So there's no issues around visitors coming and just walking around the building and checking out the outside grounds?
Yeah, there's nothing like we have people come, I've seen quite often, and they'll just take pictures, go on the front veranda. There's like a front veranda on the bottom and then a balcony on the top where patients would go out and sit. But yeah, so some go on the front veranda. It's just to go inside the building is very limited. Not going to say it's impossible, but it's limited. So
that's a great story. Thank you very much. So what other stories do you have to share with us today?
About other sites in town? Yeah. Well, we have a very popular museum, and it's the only one of its kind in Alberta, and I think Western Canada, if not all of Canada. And it's our pharmacy museum, and it's in an old building on Main Street. I'm not sure if I reached out to the person who runs it. His name is Mike Bain, and he is a 2nd-generation pharmacist. His father was Mike Bain Sr., and he was a pharmacist for a lot of years at the Castor in the old hospital. And so Mike has a real passion for history, and his museum is in what used to be an old drugstore, but I don't know if it is an original building on Main Street or not. Actually, that one could have been original. So he has it set up so it's basically 1910 is kind of the majority of the museum, but he has parts of it that are 1910 to 1960s probably, that are carrying like it's old medicine, but it's also like old makeup products, old razors, old cameras, old, like it's like an old general store, drugstore kind of all set up. And there's an old soda counter and things like that, and a lot of them are things from our town and things that he's collected over the years. There's a few things from other spots in Alberta. He has these pharmacy sort of shelves from the original Misericordia Hospital that are in there, and things like that. And he's a really good tour guide. Like, he knows so much of the history of the town and of Castor. And admission to the pharmacy museum is free, but they do accept donations. So, and to visit it, they don't have like hours that they're open stuff. It's kind of by appointment only. So I have his number on the website that I run on Castor Alberta Tourism, and it's also posted on the door. So if you're here, you can either call them ahead of time from their number online, or you can go and call it the day you're here, and they might be around, and then they'll come and give you a private tour of the place.
Wow, interesting. Very interesting. Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm sure there's a lot of people that are interested in looking at old medical devices and but medicines and pharmaceuticals is very unique. I have never seen
Mhm.
that in museums personally, but
Yeah, and the store was his dad's for a long time, and then um, we take our long-term care residents there on outings every year, and a lot of them worked in the store years ago and ran the old cash register, and so it's kind of fun to see for them to see that still there. Um, and then he opened it in 2010 for our centennial, because Castor was had been a town for 100 years then. And other museums, we have All Saints Anglican Church, which was built in 1910, and it's virtually quite very. It's a historical site, and it's very well maintained and stuff. And it's part of our museum. So if you want to tour it, then you have to contact the town, and they have, or there's several people on our museum board who will give private tours of that too. And it would just be by donation only. There's no admission. And we had uh, a reverend there who wrote a book. I can't remember the name right now, but he wrote a book about his experiences in Castor and pastoring at that church. So yeah, that's All Saints Anglican Church, and then we have our um, town kind of main town museum, and that's in our old train station. It's not the original train station, it burned down, and this I think was rebuilt in the 40s. And so it has scenes of um, like Castor's past. There's like an old switchboard, there's a hospital scene with mannequins acting things out, there's a general store, we have our war outfits from people who served in the wars from Castor's past, and all of the stuff in there is donated from people in the town. And um, yeah, and then the upstairs is like an old house kind of setup of what it would have looked like in 1910. And there's a lot of cool old pictures and archives, and it's a really well laid out museum to walk through. And then across the street there's the Grain Elevator Historical Site, and it's our only grain elevator that's left here. And they will if you depends who you have giving the tour at the museum, they will, if you ask. They don't always have the schoolhouse, and there's a schoolhouse across the street called Beaver School that was moved into town. It was one of the country schools. And then there's a car machine shed. They don't always have those open, but if you ask, um, they'll let you in and show you the grain elevator, show you the schoolhouse, show you the machine shed with the cars. And that's kind of all together is kind of our kind of main museum.
yeah.
So,
What other assets does Castor have for visitors?
yeah, we have our creek, our that wraps around. It's called the Beaver Dam Creek, and that's kind of what Castor, what the area was known as before Castor became a town. And it has these yeah, beautiful sandstone cliffs along the edge, and it's popular for paddle boarders and kayakers. It's, in my opinion, a lot better than a lake in terms of kayaking and paddleboarding, because you wind your way around it. It's much more scenic. And when there, we have a beach and docks, and there's a bridge there, and if you go right underneath the bridge, that's all paddle boards and kayaks. There's no motorboats, and left of it is there's motorboats and jet skis, um, and there's even a cliff that some people like to jump off of, but I wouldn't recommend jumping off cliffs if you don't know what the cliff, which cliff it is, because some of them are very shallow underneath. Yeah, there's an old diving board too. It used to be the main swimming hole before our swimming pool was built here. So in the early 1900s to the early 60s, there was a diving board there on this huge cliff. Like it has to be 20, 30 feet up, and people were jumping off of that. And part of the cliff has caved in since, so it's shallow under there now. So it wouldn't be wise to jump off there now. And a girl drowned there and in the 60s. So then they decided to build the swimming pool. And so we've had our outdoor swimming pool since the 1960s, and it's a really nice outdoor pool. It's a nice place to go in the summer. And we have Pell's Park, which is has some really nice walking trails around some ponds through our town, and there's always lots of wildlife there, lots of geese and ducks, and yeah, I don't think I've ever been there where I haven't seen some bird or wildlife. And nearby things are we have Big Knife National Park that's about 20 minutes away, and there's some nice hiking trails and kayaking and fishing and camping there. We have a ghost town of Bulwark that's about 19 minutes away. It used to be this it was never had a large population. It was only ever close to 100 people, but they had several hotels, and it was this kind of big stopping site on the railway. And then when the railway was removed, it became a ghost town in the 60s. And all that's left, there's a cemetery there and some kind of remains of some old buildings and a sign, but it's on Highway 599, and there's a little sign on the highway, but it's kind of hard to find. And a lot of people don't really know about even out here. Not everyone's aware of it. Other things to do. Statler has their railway, which a lot of people would probably be aware of. Statler's 45 minutes away from us, and they have the railway that goes from there to Big Valley, and that's the same railway that came to Castor, but it was taken out in, I think, the late 90s, early 2000s. They removed the railway from here. And that's we have a fishing pond in town that people called Eastside Trout Pond that people will go fishing at sometimes. And we have a ski hill that's 15 minutes away called Alliance Ski Hill. It's a nice little prairie ski hill. You know, it's not mountain standards or anything, but it's in the Battle River Valley, and it's nice if you're not an expert skier. It's the perfect hill to learn on. But yeah, that's kind of the majority of things to do here, I would say.
Yeah, and are there any historical sites within a short drive from Castor that are recognized or popular?
It's a good question. I think other towns like Coronation and Statler would have their own historical sites, but there's not like Bulwark. I don't know if that's deemed a historical site. I just know it's a ghost town. I don't know of any that there would be a few old school sites that have monuments around here, but once again, they'd be pretty hard to find, some of them, because there's not a map with directions to put into your GPS and head to. Yeah, not a lot of that. We do have some cool shops that I failed to mention earlier, if you'd like to hear about that.
Sure.
We have a gourmet popcorn and candy store. So they have, I don't know, like maybe 20 flavors of popcorn, and their popcorn's really good. And we have a specialty honey store, and they're not always open. He's not always open, but he sells it in our Home Hardware here, his honeys, and in our Value Drug Mart. So he makes, I don't know, probably over 100 flavors of different honeys, and they're really interesting to taste test. And we have we have a vintage thistle store. It's kind of a plant flower store, gift shop. They have a lot of some local stuff made by local artisans, and we have a really nice outdoor camping, adventure, hunting store that's pretty new. It opened earlier this year, and we have if you like history, it might be able to find some. We have a really good used bookstore called the Purple Platypus, and they have sometimes, like, some people have found some really good finds and some historic books in there. And yeah, and our drugstore is really nice. They carry some artwork from local artists, and our home hardware also carries some local stuff like the honeys and some candles made by local people, and they have a coffee shop in there too. That's nice. So that's kind of trying to think if I've missed anything. That's the majority of the stores on Main Street. And we have an opportunity, it's called the Opportunity Shop, and it's a thrift store that's open every Thursday, only one day a week during the summer months, and I think it's only one day a month during the winter months. And it's it's open on Thursdays from 2 to 4 p.m. and that's really cool. And then I should mention Halkirk. It's only 10-15 minutes away from Castor, and they have a really nice well-preserved historic hotel that has this really nice restaurant in it, bar and restaurant, and they have theme nights, like Thursdays are wing night, Fridays are steak night, Saturdays are barbecue night, and you sometimes have to book reservations ahead of time because it fills up pretty fast sometimes. And then right beside there they have a store called the Halkirk Snack Shack, and it's one of the best thrift stores ever. They have like everything, and they're open 7 days a week and very good hours open. I'm not sure about Sundays. I think they're a bit shorter, but they're open like 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. every other day. So
does Castor have any annual events?
Yeah, we have our Winterfest in February, and so businesses and places make ice sculptures, and I know last year there was a chili competition, and there was like 20 some kinds of chili, and then people walked around town tasting all the chili. And when we have those things, all the stores are open, and there's sometimes fireworks and concerts and things like that. And we have our fair in the summer, which we have our parade, and there's usually lots of activities for kids and like that.
Great, excellent. So as far as local notable people, I mean, are there any artists, politicians, people of notoriety that have come out of Castor?
Well, Katie Lang's from concert, but the sisters at the hospital taught her music lessons. She went to Therazetta School, and the sisters are the ones that taught her music. And Shane Doan, the hockey player, was from Halkirk, and he played on the sport teams in Castor and stuff. I think Darcy Tucker, he was a hockey player, and he was from this area. I can't think of anyone else who I'm aware of is famous that came out of Castor.
Interesting. So how can people find out about your tourism? You said you had a website?
Yeah. It's Castor Alberta Tourism dot Weebly, WEEBLY dot, I think it's just dot Weebly. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
If you type in Castor Alberta Tourism on the internet, it will be one of the first web pages that come up. And then we have a Instagram and Facebook page. Castor Alberta Tourism is what it's called, and I post historic sometimes historic stuff about the town and upcoming events, and then promote businesses and museums on there and stuff like that.
Great. Excellent.
Oh, we also have a farmers market once a month. The first Thursday of every month is our farmers market, and it's quite a good farmers market. We have a lot of, local baking, a lot of like woodwork stuff, knitting and clothing, and yeah, it's a really great place to go shopping for Christmas stuff and birthdays and stuff.
Wonderful. Well, that's great. Jenessa, that's fantastic. Really good stories. Great, interesting town. Very dynamic in many ways. Is there anything else you'd like to mention that people might be interested in?
I have one other story I could tell about the old hospital. The young staff, the ladies that were working in there, they were encouraged to date. The sisters encouraged them to go on dates. But before they left, they had to tell the sister who was working on the night shift what time they were going to be back at. And then she would come and unlock the door for them, because the hospital is always locked at night. And if they were back like a minute late, they were on their own. They were not getting in. So the nuns really wanted you to adhere to the curfew that you set for yourself, where they could be strict, but I've been told they all had a good sense of humor. And yeah, there's just a lot of little stories like that people, boarders, would know. And I'm still, interested in finding out more myself. I'm trying to like ask around and see who all, because there's a lot of people that I've known my whole life, and like just yesterday I was talking to one lady who I've known my whole life, and she was like, oh yeah, I boarded on the 3rd floor, and I had no idea. So I'm just interested in finding out more of those stories like that to, preserve the history and pass down to future generations of, the incredible, how incredible our hospital is here.
Great, Jenessa. Well, thanks so much for sharing this with our audience. Really appreciate your time today, and I wish you all the best in your future endeavors there and promoting the region. And we'll look forward to. I look forward to coming out there. I'm actually very interested in coming out and visiting Castor now. I've been through town before, but I didn't stick around. So sounds like there's a lot of interesting stuff there.
Yeah. Oh, we also have, I should have mentioned, a really nice golf course that people sometimes like to come here to use.
Nice. Excellent. Okay, well, thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks.
Thank you for listening to another Hands-On History podcast. Remember, history in Alberta is a hands-on adventure. We encourage you to visit the sites covered in our podcasts. Visit our website at handsonhistory.ca to subscribe to future podcasts. Bye for now.